Welcome to this journey of growth, achievement, and purposeful living. Take a moment and imagine the life you truly want. Not the life people expect from you, not the version designed by society, friends, or circumstances, but the life that feels meaningful to you. Imagine waking up every morning with excitement instead of hesitation. Imagine moving through your days with clarity instead of confusion. Imagine knowing where you are going and why you are going there. Many people move through life reacting to events. They wake up, follow routines, solve problems, and repeat the cycle day after day. Years pass, and eventually they realize they have been busy without being intentional. Activity and progress are not always the same thing. A person can run all day and still remain in the same place if the direction is wrong. The first principle of achievement begins with desire. Desire is not a weak wish. A wish says, "It would be nice if this happened." Desire says, "I am committed to making this happen." There is a major difference between wanting something casually and wanting something deeply. Casual wants disappear at the first sign of difficulty. Strong desire survives obstacles. Think about the goals that truly matter to you. Maybe you want financial freedom. Maybe you want a successful business. Maybe you want better health, stronger relationships, or a life filled with purpose. Whatever it is, clarity matters. The mind responds to specific targets. If an archer shoots an arrow without aiming at anything, the arrow travels but reaches no meaningful destination. Many people say they want success, but if you ask what success means, the answer becomes unclear. Success for one person may mean owning a company. For another, it may mean peace of mind. For someone else, it may mean helping thousands of people through meaningful work. There is no universal definition. Your destination belongs to you. Once a goal becomes clear, something begins to change inside the mind. Tension shifts. Opportunities become easier to recognize. Ideas begin to appear where there was once uncertainty. The world often looks different when you know what you are searching for. However, desire alone is not enough. You may dream of a mountain peak, but dreams do not carry your feet upward. The next step is belief. You must learn to trust the possibility of your own progress. Many people stop themselves before life ever stops them. They say, "I am not talented enough. I am too late. Other people have advantages that I do not have." Those thoughts quietly become invisible walls. The truth is that every person starts somewhere. Every expert was once a beginner. Every successful person once faced uncertainty. Confidence is rarely something that appears before action. Confidence often appears because of action. Think of learning to ride a bicycle. At first, there is fear and imbalance. Falling seems unavoidable. But after repeated attempts, something changes. The body learns. The fear decreases. The impossible slowly becomes natural. Life works similarly. Action creates evidence. Evidence builds confidence. Confidence strengthens belief. Belief encourages greater action. And the cycle continues. Imagine waking every day with a quiet certainty that you are moving towards something meaningful. Imagine carrying the understanding that today's effort is not wasted simply because results are invisible. Seeds planted beneath the ground appear inactive long before they break through the surface. Growth often happens in silence before it becomes visible. As you continue forward, there is another truth that becomes important to understand. The human mind follows repetition. Every day, whether people realize it or not, they repeat thoughts to themselves. Some thoughts build strength while others slowly weaken it. Some people wake up and unconsciously tell themselves, "Life is difficult. I always struggle. Nothing works for me." Even if these words are never spoken aloud, they become silent conversations repeated inside the mind. The mind pays attention to what it hears repeatedly. Imagine hearing the same message every day for years. Eventually, it begins to feel familiar, and familiarity often starts to feel like truth. This is why the words you speak to yourself matter more than many people realize. Consider two individuals facing the same challenge. Both lose a business opportunity. Both feel disappointment. The first person says, "This proves I am not capable." The second says, "This is feedback. I need to improve and try again." The event is the same, but the interpretation is different. One person sees an ending while the other sees a lesson. Thoughts become habits. Habits become actions. Actions become results. Results eventually shape a life. This does not mean pretending that difficulties do not exist. Challenges are real. Fear is real. Disappointment is real. But there is a difference between recognizing difficulty and surrendering to it. One approach says, "This situation is hard." The other says, "This situation defines me forever." Those are not the same thing. Every day your mind receives information from conversations, media, experiences, and emotions. Imagine your mind as a garden. A garden never remains empty. If useful plants are not intentionally grown, weeds eventually appear on their own. Negative assumptions often grow automatically if they are not replaced with stronger thoughts. You do not need perfect confidence before beginning something important. Many people wait for certainty before they act. They believe one day they will suddenly wake up feeling fearless and ready. But growth usually works differently. Readiness often arrives after movement begins. Imagine standing beside a swimming pool for the first time. You study the water, analyze the temperature, think about every possible outcome, and wait for complete certainty. Hours could pass, yet eventually one truth remains. Understanding the experience completely requires entering the water. Life presents many moments like this. Starting a business, learning a skill, beginning a project, changing careers, speaking publicly, creating something meaningful. These moments often require movement before confidence appears. There is also another powerful force in human development: knowledge. Knowledge gives direction to effort. Hard work alone does not guarantee results. A person can push against the wrong wall with tremendous effort and still remain exhausted with little progress. Learning matters because it shortens unnecessary struggle. The world rewards people who continue growing. Technology changes. Industries change. Skills change. Opportunities change. The people who adapt often create advantages for themselves over time. However, collecting information is not the same as applying it. Some people spend years preparing without beginning. They read books endlessly, watch courses continuously, and wait for the perfect moment. Knowledge becomes valuable when it transforms behavior. Imagine someone reading hundreds of books about fitness while never exercising. Imagine someone studying entrepreneurship for years while never starting a small project. Information without action becomes stored potential rather than progress. Small actions matter because they create momentum. Momentum is powerful because movement often creates additional movement. One completed task makes the next task easier. One disciplined day encourages another disciplined day. One brave decision makes future courage more natural. Many people underestimate small progress because they become distracted by dramatic results. They want immediate transformation. They want success to arrive quickly and visibly. But large outcomes are often collections of small repeated actions. Think about a river cutting through stone. The water is not stronger because of a single moment of force. It becomes powerful through consistency. Day after day, movement continues. Over time, the results become impossible to ignore. Life frequently rewards consistency more than intensity. Intensity creates excitement. Consistency creates change. There will also be moments when imagination becomes important. Every achievement begins as an idea before becoming reality. Every building existed as a thought before becoming a structure. Every invention existed in someone's mind before becoming something people could touch. Imagination allows people to see possibilities that do not yet exist. It allows someone to look at ordinary circumstances and ask a simple question: what if something better is possible? Children naturally use imagination without fear. They create stories, explore ideas, and believe unusual things can happen. As people grow older, fear sometimes limits imagination. Adults often become concerned with appearing realistic. They stop asking powerful questions. But progress often begins with questions. What if there is another way? What if a solution exists that I have not seen yet? What if my current limits are temporary rather than permanent? What if I am capable of more than I currently believe? Questions open doors inside the mind. Questions create movement. Questions challenge assumptions. And sometimes the greatest changes begin with a single question asked at the right moment. Ideas by themselves are powerful, but ideas without structure often disappear. Many people have experienced moments of excitement where inspiration suddenly arrives. They feel energized, motivated, and convinced that everything is about to change. They imagine future possibilities and see success clearly in their minds. But then days pass. Routine returns. Responsibilities appear. Energy decreases. Slowly, the idea fades away. This happens because inspiration is only the beginning. A destination without a path creates frustration. This is where planning becomes important. Planning is simply giving direction to desire. It is taking something invisible and giving it form. A goal in the mind becomes a series of actions on paper. Dreams become schedules. Possibilities become tasks. Think of someone wanting to build a house. They may have a beautiful vision of the finished structure. They may imagine the rooms, the design, and the experience of living there. But without a blueprint, materials remain scattered and effort becomes chaotic. Life works similarly. Many people know what they want but never create a system for reaching it. They rely entirely on motivation. The problem is that motivation rises and falls. Some mornings people feel powerful and energized. Other mornings they feel tired and distracted. If progress depends entirely on emotion, progress becomes unstable. Systems protect people from emotional inconsistency. For example, imagine someone wanting to improve physically. Instead of saying, "I want better health someday," they create a plan. They decide to exercise for 30 minutes every day. They prepare meals intentionally. They track progress weekly. The plan removes confusion. Confusion often creates delay. Delay creates inaction. When people are uncertain about the next step, they frequently do nothing at all. But when the next action becomes clear, movement becomes easier. The next important lesson is learning to make decisions. Decision-making shapes the direction of life more than many people realize. Life often changes because of moments that seem small while they are happening. A person decides to start learning a skill. A person decides to make a phone call. A person decides to apply for an opportunity. A person decides to walk away from something harmful. A person decides to continue instead of quitting. Months or years later, those moments can appear larger than they seemed at the time. Many people struggle with decisions because they want guarantees. They want certainty before they move. They want proof that every step will succeed. But life rarely offers complete certainty. Imagine standing at the beginning of a long road surrounded by fog. You cannot see the entire journey. You cannot see every turn or obstacle ahead. But you can see the next few steps. Progress often works that way. People sometimes remain trapped because they wait to see the whole path before taking the first step. Yet movement itself often reveals what was previously hidden. Indecision quietly steals time. Days become weeks. Weeks become months. Opportunities pass while people remain stuck between possibilities. This does not mean every decision should be rushed. Thought matters. Reflection matters. Learning matters. But eventually a moment arrives where action becomes necessary. There is another reality that every person encounters sooner or later. Obstacles appear. Difficulties are not evidence that you are moving in the wrong direction. Challenges exist within nearly every meaningful journey. Problems are not unusual interruptions to life. In many ways, they are part of life itself. Imagine climbing a mountain. No one expects the climb to be completely smooth. Rocks exist. Steep paths exist. Fatigue exists. Unexpected weather exists. Yet people still continue because the existence of difficulty does not eliminate the value of reaching the top. Persistence becomes important during these moments. Persistence means continuing movement even when excitement disappears. It means continuing effort even when results arrive more slowly than expected. It means refusing to allow temporary setbacks to become permanent conclusions. There is a powerful difference between failure and quitting. Failure is often an event. Quitting is a decision. A business attempt may fail. An interview may fail. Project may fail. Plan may fail. But a failed event does not automatically create a failed person. History repeatedly shows examples of people who experienced rejection before experiencing success. Some were ignored. Some were criticized. Some lost money. Some faced embarrassment. Some doubted themselves. Yet they continued. Persistence does not always mean moving quickly. Sometimes persistence simply means refusing to stop. There may be days when progress feels invisible. There may be moments where effort appears meaningless. During those times, it becomes important to remember that growth often happens before evidence appears. Imagine planting seeds beneath the ground. For a period of time, nothing seems different. Looking at the surface reveals no visible change. Yet beneath the ground, roots are forming quietly. Not every important process is visible immediately. Sometimes people abandon their goals simply because results remain hidden for a while. They assume nothing is happening. But reality may be different. Invisible progress is still progress. And often the people who eventually succeed are not always the most naturally gifted individuals. Frequently, they are simply the people who remained present long enough for effort to accumulate. Small, repeated actions eventually create outcomes that appear extraordinary to others. Day after day, step after step, decision after decision, effort after effort. Eventually, the distance behind you becomes larger than the distance ahead. No person moves through life entirely alone. Even though individual effort matters, there are moments when the people around us influence our direction more than we realize. Human beings naturally absorb energy, habits, beliefs, and expectations from the environments they spend time in. Sometimes this influence is obvious, and sometimes it happens quietly over months and years. Imagine placing a small plant in two different environments. In one place, the soil is rich, sunlight is available, and water arrives consistently. In another place, the soil is weak and light barely reaches the leaves. The same seed may produce very different outcomes depending on where it grows. People are not plants, but environments still matter. Think about the conversations you hear regularly. Think about the people whose opinions surround you every week. Think about the voices that repeatedly enter your mind through media, relationships, workplaces, and communities. Every environment leaves some kind of mark. Some people naturally encourage growth. They challenge excuses without destroying confidence. They remind you of possibilities during moments when your own vision becomes weak. They celebrate progress and support effort. Their presence creates energy. Other environments slowly drain energy. Constant criticism, negativity, and hopeless thinking can become heavy burdens. Over time, people sometimes begin adopting limitations that were never originally their own. This does not mean avoiding every difficult person or expecting life to be filled only with encouragement. Reality does not work that way. Instead, it means becoming intentional about the influences that shape your thinking. The people around you do not determine your future completely, but they often affect the direction and speed of your growth. There is also another relationship that deserves attention, and it may be the most important relationship of all. It is the relationship you have with yourself. Many individuals speak to themselves in ways they would never speak to someone they love. They criticize every mistake. They focus on weaknesses while ignoring progress. They replay failures repeatedly while dismissing achievements as unimportant. Imagine a friend coming to you after making a mistake. Imagine that friend saying, I failed once, so I must be useless. Most people would immediately disagree. Most people would offer encouragement. Most people would say, one moment does not define your entire life. Yet many individuals refuse to extend that same understanding toward themselves. Growth does not require perfection. Growth requires honesty and continuation. There will always be things to improve. There will always be mistakes to correct. But there is a difference between learning from mistakes and becoming imprisoned by them. As people continue moving through life, another powerful force appears repeatedly. Fear. Fear exists in many forms. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of uncertainty, fear of losing something important. Fear often arrives before meaningful action. Someone wants to begin a business but fears financial loss. Someone wants to speak publicly but fears embarrassment. Someone wants to pursue a dream but fears criticism from others. Fear often speaks with a convincing voice. It says, wait a little longer. It says, maybe now is not the right time. It says, what if things go wrong? At first, these thoughts can sound reasonable, but sometimes fear disguises itself as logic while quietly creating delay. Imagine standing at the edge of a door that leads toward opportunity. Fear often stands beside that door and begins presenting reasons to remain where you are. The strange thing is that fear frequently becomes larger before action and smaller after action. Think back to moments when you felt nervous before doing something important. Maybe it was an interview, a presentation, a conversation, or a major decision. The anticipation often felt heavier than the experience itself. This happens because the mind naturally imagines possibilities, and imagination can create both hope and anxiety. The challenge is not eliminating fear completely. Fear may never disappear entirely. Courage does not require the absence of fear. Courage often means continuing despite fear. Imagine a person learning to walk across a narrow bridge. During the first attempt, every step feels uncertain. Muscles tighten. Attention becomes intense. Fear whispers warnings constantly. But after crossing many times, something changes. Familiarity grows. Confidence increases. What once seemed overwhelming slowly becomes manageable. Life works similarly. Repeated action changes perception. Things that once felt impossible eventually become ordinary. Things that once felt terrifying eventually become manageable. Things that once seemed distant eventually become reality. There will always be reasons to wait. There will always be reasons to postpone effort until tomorrow, next month, or next year. There will always be reasons explaining why conditions are imperfect. But life continues moving whether people act or not. Days continue passing. Months continue passing. Years continue passing. And eventually an important question appears. If nothing changes in your actions, where will your current path lead? Sometimes that question creates discomfort, but discomfort occasionally becomes useful because it invites awareness. Awareness creates choice. Choice creates change. Change creates possibility. And possibility creates new beginnings. As this journey begins to come together, pause for a moment and reflect on everything you have heard so far. Think about the ideas not as separate lessons but as connected pieces of a larger picture. Desire gives direction. Belief creates inner strength. Repeated thoughts influence actions. Knowledge creates understanding. Imagination opens possibilities. Planning builds structure. Decisions create movement. Persistence keeps progress alive. Relationships shape environments. Self-awareness creates growth. Courage moves through fear. Action transforms potential into reality. None of these ideas are powerful because they exist individually. Their strength appears when they begin working together. Imagine a ship crossing a vast ocean. The destination represents your goal. Desire chooses where the ship wants to go. Belief becomes the confidence that the journey is possible. Knowledge becomes the map. Planning becomes the route. Decisions determine each turn of the wheel. Persistence keeps the ship moving during storms. Supportive people become the crew helping navigate difficult waters. Courage allows movement through uncertainty. Without direction, the ship drifts. Without movement, the ship remains in the harbor. Without persistence, the ship turns back at the first storm. Life often follows similar patterns. Many people spend years waiting for dramatic transformation. They imagine a future morning where motivation suddenly arrives in unlimited amounts. They imagine a perfect moment where fear disappears, certainty appears, and every answer becomes clear. But meaningful change usually enters life quietly. It arrives through small choices. Person wakes up slightly earlier. Person reads a few pages. Person learns a skill. Person makes an uncomfortable phone call. A person takes a step despite uncertainty. Person tries again after disappointment. Small actions rarely feel dramatic while they are happening. Yet over time they create enormous differences. Imagine two individuals beginning in similar situations. During the first day, their choices appear almost identical. During the first week, there seems to be little difference. Even after several months, the changes may appear small. But years later, the distance between them may become enormous. One person continuously improved little by little. One person continuously delayed little by little. The choices seemed small in the beginning. The outcomes became large in the end. This is why consistency becomes one of the most underestimated forces in life. Repeated effort often defeats occasional intensity. A person does not become stronger because of one exercise session. Knowledge does not appear because of reading one page. Success rarely arrives because of one day of work. Progress accumulates. Drops of water eventually fill an ocean. Individual moments eventually become years. Repeated actions eventually become identity. There is also something important to remember during difficult seasons. You do not need to have everything figured out immediately. People sometimes place enormous pressure on themselves to know every answer before beginning. But very few journeys reveal their entire path at the start. Imagine walking through darkness with a small lantern. The light does not illuminate the entire road ahead. It may only reveal a few steps, yet those few steps are often enough. As you move forward, new parts of the road appear. As you continue learning, understanding grows. As you continue acting, confidence develops. As you continue living intentionally, direction becomes clearer. Life is often discovered while moving rather than while waiting. You may experience failures along the way. Plans may change. Expectations may collapse. Some opportunities may disappear completely. There may be moments where discouragement feels heavy. During those times, remember this simple truth. Temporary outcomes do not permanently define you. A difficult chapter is not the entire story. A setback is not an identity. A mistake is not a life sentence. Human beings possess an incredible ability to adapt, learn, rebuild, and continue. History repeatedly proves this. Individuals have rebuilt after financial loss. They have rebuilt after rejection. They have rebuilt after uncertainty and disappointment. Again and again, people discovered strength they did not know they possessed. Strength often reveals itself during moments where continuation feels difficult. Perhaps there is a dream inside you that has been waiting quietly for attention. Perhaps there is an idea you continue thinking about. Perhaps there is a goal you once believed was important but slowly placed aside. Maybe this is the moment to remember it again. Not because success is guaranteed. Not because the journey will always be easy. Not because obstacles will disappear. But because time continues moving regardless. One day you will look back at the years behind you. You will remember the decisions you made, the risks you avoided, the efforts you continued, and the opportunities you embraced. And one of the most powerful feelings a person can experience is knowing they participated fully in their own life. Not perfectly, not fearlessly, not without mistakes, but fully. So as you move forward from this moment, ask yourself a simple question. What small action can I take today? Not next year, not someday, today. Because great achievements rarely begin with extraordinary moments. They often begin with ordinary moments followed by action. One decision, one step, one effort, one day at a time. And sometimes that single step becomes the beginning of an entirely different future. There is something interesting about human potential that many people overlook. Most limits people experience are not physical limits. More often, they are mental boundaries created through repetition, experience, and belief. Somewhere along the journey of life, many individuals quietly accept ideas about themselves that were never carefully examined. Perhaps someone once said they were not intelligent enough. Perhaps someone told them they were unrealistic. Perhaps failure convinced them they were incapable. Perhaps comparison made them feel small. Over time, these ideas slowly become labels. And labels are dangerous when people stop questioning them. Imagine an eagle raised among chickens from the moment it was born. Day after day, it watches the birds around it remain close to the ground. It observes short movements and small jumps. Eventually, the eagle may begin believing that this limited view is normal because it has never experienced anything different. The ability to fly existed from the beginning. The limitation existed in perception. Human beings sometimes create similar situations inside their own minds. A person says, "I am simply not creative." Another says, "I am not a leader." Another says, "I am not the kind of person who succeeds." The mind hears these statements repeatedly and begins organizing behavior around them. People rarely move toward futures they believe are impossible for themselves. This is why awareness matters. The moment you notice a limiting thought, you gain an opportunity. You can ask a powerful question. Is this truly a fact? Or is it a conclusion I accepted without enough evidence? That question can change everything. Many beliefs people carry are built on a very small number of experiences. Someone fails once and concludes they always fail. Someone experiences rejection and concludes they are not valuable. Someone struggles while learning and concludes they lack ability. But imagine if children learned to walk this way. Imagine a child falling one time and saying, "Walking clearly is not for me." Progress would stop immediately. Yet adults sometimes do exactly this in other areas of life. Growth requires allowing yourself to remain a beginner long enough to improve. Being new at something is not weakness. Being inexperienced is not failure. Learning naturally includes mistakes. The challenge is that society often celebrates visible success while ignoring invisible practice. People see athletes winning competitions but do not see years of repetition. People see businesses succeeding but do not see years of uncertainty. People see confidence but do not always see earlier insecurity. Results become visible after long periods of unseen effort. This creates an illusion where success appears sudden. But very little meaningful growth is actually sudden. There is another important idea to remember during your journey. Comparison can quietly steal energy from progress. The world constantly provides opportunities to compare lives, achievements, appearances, possessions, and timelines. One person appears ahead financially, another seems happier, someone else seems more talented or more successful. Comparison often creates two problems. Sometimes it creates feelings of inferiority. Sometimes it creates false superiority. Neither creates peace. Every person moves through different circumstances, different opportunities, different struggles, and different timelines. Imagine runners competing in different races on entirely different roads while constantly looking sideways at one another. Attention becomes divided. Direction becomes unstable. Progress becomes difficult when attention remains fixed on someone else's path. Instead of asking, "Why am I not where someone else is?" a more useful question appears. Am I becoming stronger than I was yesterday? Am I learning? Am I improving? Am I moving? Small progress against your own previous self is meaningful progress. There will always be people ahead of you in some areas. There will always be people behind you in some areas. But your life is not designed to become a copy of someone else's journey. Your responsibility is not becoming another person. Your responsibility is becoming more fully yourself. And that process unfolds one action, one lesson, and one day at a time. As life continues, there comes a moment for many people where they begin asking deeper questions. Questions beyond money, achievements, titles, or recognition. Questions that move beneath the surface and reach into meaning itself. Why am I doing what I am doing? What kind of life am I creating? What impact will I leave behind? These questions matter because achievement without meaning can sometimes create emptiness. A person may climb a mountain only to discover they never wanted to stand on that particular peak in the first place. This is why purpose matters. Purpose acts like an internal compass. A compass does not remove storms. It does not eliminate obstacles. It does not shorten every journey, but it helps maintain direction when conditions become confusing. Imagine two people performing the same difficult task. One sees only effort and exhaustion. The other sees contribution and meaning. Externally, the activity may appear identical, yet internally the experience becomes very different. Meaning changes energy. Purpose changes endurance. Purpose often gives people strength during moments where motivation alone becomes weak. There will be times when life feels repetitive. There will be seasons where progress appears slow and ordinary routines dominate the day. Wake up, work, solve problems, rest, repeat. During those periods, people sometimes believe nothing important is happening. But ordinary days quietly build extraordinary lives. Think about a building under construction. On some days, dramatic changes become visible. Walls appear, structures rise, progress becomes obvious. On other days, very little seems different from the outside. Workers continue placing materials, measuring distances, adjusting details, and strengthening foundations. Yet both types of days matter. Visible progress matters. Invisible preparation matters too. Life often develops through foundations people cannot immediately see. Patience becomes valuable here because modern life frequently encourages urgency. People want immediate results, immediate answers, immediate success, immediate transformation. Waiting can feel uncomfortable. Silence can feel uncomfortable. Slow progress can feel uncomfortable. Yet nature itself often teaches a different lesson. Trees do not grow overnight. Seasons do not change instantly. Rivers shape landscapes over time. Growth frequently respects process. This does not mean waiting passively. Patience is not the same as doing nothing. Patience means continuing effort while understanding that some outcomes require time. There is another reality many people discover eventually. Life rarely follows exact plans. You may expect one road and encounter another. You may pursue one opportunity and discover something entirely different. You may lose something important only to later realize space was created for something new. At first, unexpected changes can feel frightening because human beings naturally seek certainty. Familiar patterns create comfort, but sometimes uncertainty carries possibility hidden inside it. Imagine reading a book where every event is already known in advance. Every page is predictable. Every outcome is guaranteed. The story would quickly lose excitement. Part of what creates meaning in life is not knowing every chapter before it arrives. Some of the most important experiences enter life unexpectedly. Unexpected friendships, unexpected opportunities, unexpected lessons, unexpected moments of growth. Many people discover strengths they never knew existed because circumstances demanded those strengths. People learn courage because fear existed. People learn resilience because difficulty existed. People learn gratitude because loss revealed value. Sometimes life teaches through experience what words alone cannot teach. And perhaps that is one reason journeys matter so much. Because people rarely become stronger only through information. They become stronger through living. They become stronger through trying. They become stronger through failing and continuing. They become stronger through uncertainty. They become stronger through experience itself. Years from now, you may not remember every detail of your journey. You may forget many ordinary days, but you will likely remember moments where you chose courage over comfort, growth over avoidance, and action over hesitation. Because those moments quietly become turning points. And turning points often begin long before people recognize their importance. Sometimes a life changes because of a conversation. Sometimes because of a decision. Sometimes because of a challenge. Sometimes because someone finally believed that a different future was possible. And sometimes change begins in a quiet moment where a person simply decides, I will continue forward. There is a quiet difference between existing and truly living, and many people spend years without noticing it. Existing often happens automatically. Days pass, routines repeat, responsibilities appear and disappear, and life moves forward almost on its own. Wake up, work, eat, sleep, repeat. There is nothing wrong with routine itself because structure can create stability. But sometimes people become so focused on completing days that they stop fully experiencing them. Have you ever driven somewhere and realized you barely remembered the journey? Your mind was occupied with worries, plans, memories, or distractions. The body moved while attention traveled somewhere else. Life sometimes happens in a similar way. People become so focused on reaching future moments that they forget the present moment is where life is actually unfolding. A person says, I will be happy when I earn more money. Another says, I will be happy when I find the right opportunity. Someone else says, I will be happy when everything finally becomes easier. The problem is not having goals. Goals matter. Growth matters. Ambition matters. But if happiness permanently moves into the future, it becomes difficult to experience peace in the present. Because after reaching one destination, another destination usually appears. After achieving one goal, another goal often follows. The human mind naturally continues searching. This means people sometimes spend entire lives chasing arrival while never experiencing appreciation. Imagine climbing a mountain while refusing to look around until reaching the top. Step after step, hour after hour, all attention remains fixed on the destination. Eventually, the summit arrives, but the forests, rivers, skies, and landscapes along the journey were never truly experienced. Life may work similarly. There is value in pausing. There is value in noticing. There is value in gratitude. Gratitude does not require pretending everything is perfect. Difficult seasons exist. Problems exist. Loss exists. Pain exists. Gratitude simply means recognizing that even during imperfect moments, something valuable may still be present. Perhaps it is health. Perhaps it is friendship. Perhaps it is family. Perhaps it is opportunity. Perhaps it is simply another day to continue. Human attention naturally moves toward problems because survival historically depended on noticing danger. The mind often scans for what is missing, what is wrong, and what could go badly. But sometimes people become so focused on what is absent that they stop recognizing what is already present. Imagine holding a glass of clean water after walking through a desert for days. That water would feel priceless. Appreciation changes perception. Many things people consider ordinary today were once hopes they wished for yesterday. Think about that carefully. There was likely a time when you wished for things that now seem normal. Skills you developed, experiences you reached, relationships you built, challenges you overcame. Progress can become invisible when people immediately move to the next objective without acknowledging how far they have already traveled. Take a moment and imagine speaking with a younger version of yourself. Imagine meeting the person you once were years ago. That version of you would probably notice strengths that you overlook because you see them every day. That version of you might be amazed by what feels ordinary now. Growth sometimes becomes difficult to recognize from the inside because change often happens gradually. Just as a person standing beside a tree every day may not notice its growth, people sometimes fail to recognize their own development. But growth is often happening quietly. You understand things differently. You recover differently. You think differently. You handle challenges differently. You carry wisdom today that previous versions of yourself did not yet possess. And perhaps one of the most important forms of success is not simply changing circumstances. Perhaps it is becoming a stronger, wiser, and more capable human being during the process. Because external success can appear and disappear. Money can change. Opportunities can change. Situations can change. But the person you become travels with you everywhere. And in many ways, who you become may ultimately matter more than what you acquire. There are moments in life that seem ordinary while they are happening but later reveal themselves as important turning points. At the time, they often appear small. A conversation lasts only a few minutes. A decision takes only a few seconds. A thought enters the mind quietly and almost disappears. Yet sometimes these small moments begin changing the direction of an entire life. Imagine standing beside two roads. At first, the roads appear nearly identical. Both seem to move toward the same horizon. The difference between them looks insignificant. But mile after mile, small differences in direction gradually become enormous distances. Life often changes through small choices repeated over long periods of time. This can feel both challenging and encouraging. It can feel challenging because small negative habits also accumulate. Delaying important work for a few minutes may seem harmless. Avoiding responsibilities for one day may appear unimportant. Ignoring health occasionally may not seem significant, but repeated patterns eventually create larger outcomes. Yet this truth is also encouraging because improvement works the same way. Reading a few pages each day matters. Practicing a skill regularly matters. Saving small amounts consistently matters. Showing kindness repeatedly matters. Keeping promises to yourself matters. The challenge is that people naturally become excited by dramatic change. Dramatic change feels visible, creates strong emotions and immediate attention. Small change often feels invisible, and because it feels invisible, many people underestimate it. Imagine placing a single drop of water into a large container. Nothing appears different. Add another drop and still nothing obvious changes. Continue adding drops and the change remains difficult to notice. But eventually the container becomes full. The individual drops mattered even when they seemed insignificant. Life frequently operates through accumulation. Knowledge accumulates. Habits accumulate. Relationships accumulate. Experiences accumulate. Confidence accumulates. Even self-doubt accumulates if it is repeated often enough. This means each day carries more influence than people sometimes realize. Not because every day must be perfect. Not because every moment determines your future completely. But because repeated patterns gradually shape identity. People often ask themselves questions such as, how do I become successful? Or, how do I change my life? Sometimes a different question becomes useful. What kind of person am I becoming through my repeated actions? Because actions eventually become habits. Habits eventually become character. Character eventually influences destiny. Think about someone learning a musical instrument. During the first day, the improvement may be almost impossible to notice. During the first week, progress still appears small. The person might feel discouraged. They might think, I am not improving fast enough. Yet, if that person continues practicing consistently, months later something remarkable begins to happen. Movements become easier. Confidence grows. Skills become natural. What once felt difficult becomes familiar. The transformation appears large at the end, but it was built through many ordinary sessions of practice. This idea extends into nearly every area of life. Strength develops through repeated effort. Trust develops through repeated honesty. Wisdom develops through repeated learning. Courage develops through repeated action despite fear. No single day usually creates the entire result. Results are often hidden inside patterns. There will also be moments where progress feels slow enough to create frustration. Human beings naturally want evidence that effort is producing results. When evidence appears slowly, doubts sometimes begin entering the mind. Questions appear. Is this working? Am I wasting my time? Should I stop trying? During these moments, it becomes important to remember something simple. Not all valuable progress is immediately visible. Imagine ice beginning to melt in a cold room. The temperature rises slowly from 1 degree below freezing to another. Externally, nothing appears different. Again, the temperature rises and still nothing changes. Then eventually a small shift occurs and the ice begins becoming water. To an observer, change appears sudden. But the process started long before visible evidence appeared. Life often follows similar patterns. Many important changes are happening beneath the surface long before they become visible to the world. Skills are developing. Understanding is growing. Strength is increasing. Character is forming. Possibilities are expanding. And while results may sometimes arrive slowly, effort itself is rarely wasted when it is moving you toward becoming stronger than you were before. There is another lesson that quietly appears again and again throughout life, and it is the lesson of responsibility. Responsibility is sometimes misunderstood because people hear the word and immediately think of pressure, burden, or obligation. But responsibility can also be viewed differently. It can be understood as the ability to respond. Life does not always give people control over every event. Unexpected situations happen. Economies change. Relationships change. Opportunities appear and disappear. People experience losses they never planned for and challenges they never requested. No one controls every circumstance. But even when circumstances cannot be controlled completely, responses still matter. Imagine two people standing in the rain without umbrellas. Neither person caused the weather. Neither person requested the storm. Yet one person spends the entire time focusing only on anger and frustration while the other begins looking for shelter and a solution. The storm exists in both situations. The difference exists in response. Responsibility begins growing when people stop asking only, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking another question. What can I do from here? That question contains power because it shifts attention toward action. Action creates movement. Movement creates possibility. Possibility creates change. People sometimes become trapped because they spend enormous amounts of energy wishing reality were different instead of working with reality as it currently exists. This does not mean pretending painful experiences are easy. Difficult emotions deserve acknowledgement. Disappointment deserves acknowledgement. Grief deserves acknowledgement. Human experiences should not be ignored. But eventually there comes a moment where a person must decide whether pain will become a permanent residence or a temporary place of learning. There is strength in accepting reality without surrendering hope. Acceptance says, "This is where I am right now." Hope says, "This does not have to be where I remain." Together they create movement. There is also another interesting truth about responsibility. Small responsibilities often prepare people for larger opportunities. Many individuals dream of major success while overlooking smaller commitments directly in front of them. Someone wants leadership but avoids personal discipline. Someone wants financial growth but ignores basic habits. Someone wants trust while failing to keep promises. Sometimes people focus so much on distant goals that they underestimate present actions. Imagine someone wanting to lift enormous weight without first developing strength gradually. The body requires preparation. Life often works similarly. Growth usually builds in layers. Small commitments teach consistency. Consistency teaches discipline. Discipline teaches reliability. Reliability creates trust. Trust creates opportunity. And opportunity often opens doors that previously seemed unreachable. There will be moments where responsibility feels difficult because taking ownership sometimes removes excuses. Excuses can feel comfortable because they temporarily protect people from discomfort. Excuses say, I cannot move because conditions are imperfect. Excuses say, I cannot begin because I do not know everything. Excuses say, I will start later. The problem is not that these thoughts appear. Nearly everyone experiences them at some point. The challenge begins when temporary excuses become permanent habits. Because habits repeated long enough eventually create identities. Someone begins saying, I procrastinate. Then eventually it becomes, I am a procrastinator. Someone says, I struggle with confidence. Then eventually it becomes, I am an unconfident person. Notice the difference. The first statement describes an experience. The second statement creates an identity. Experiences can change. Behaviors can change. Skills can change. Growth remains possible. You are not permanently defined by temporary circumstances. You are not permanently defined by previous mistakes. You are not permanently defined by past versions of yourself. Human beings continue evolving throughout life. The person you are today is not necessarily the person you will become tomorrow. And perhaps one of the most hopeful ideas of all is this. You do not need to rebuild an entire life in one day. You only need to continue taking the next meaningful step. Sometimes the next step is learning. Sometimes the next step is resting. Sometimes the next step is trying again. Sometimes the next step is beginning. But whatever that next step may be, movement matters. Because roads are traveled one step at a time, and lives are transformed one choice at a time. As people continue moving through life, they eventually discover that energy is one of the most valuable resources they possess. Many assume time is the most important resource, and time certainly matters. Every person receives the same 24 hours in a day. No one can purchase extra hours or pause time completely. But how people use their energy within those hours often determines the quality of their actions. Two individuals may have the same amount of time available, yet their experiences can be completely different. One moves through the day feeling focused and intentional. The other feels distracted, exhausted, and scattered. This is because attention has power. Where attention goes, energy often follows. Imagine holding a flashlight inside a dark room. Wherever the light moves, details become visible. Objects emerge from darkness and receive focus. Attention works in a similar way within life. Whatever repeatedly receives attention begins growing in importance. If attention constantly moves toward fear, fear can begin feeling larger. If attention constantly moves toward problems, problems may dominate awareness. If attention repeatedly moves toward growth, learning, and possibility, different experiences begin emerging. This does not mean ignoring reality or pretending challenges do not exist. Difficult situations deserve practical action and honest acknowledgement. But there is a difference between solving a problem and living permanently inside the problem. Many people spend large amounts of energy worrying about events that never actually happen. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack every day filled with objects you never need. At first, the weight may seem manageable, but mile after mile, the burden becomes exhausting. Unnecessary mental weight often works the same way. Worry frequently asks questions such as, what if I fail? What if people judge me? What if things go wrong? What if I am not enough? Sometimes these questions create preparation, but often they create paralysis. Now imagine asking different questions. What if I succeed? What if I learn something valuable? What if I become stronger through this experience? What if this challenge teaches me something important? Questions shape attention. Attention shapes emotions. Emotions influence actions. Actions influence outcomes. Many people underestimate the power of the questions they ask themselves every day. Another important reality is that rest matters too. Modern culture sometimes celebrates constant activity and endless productivity. People often feel pressure to move faster, work longer, and remain busy every moment. But machines overheat when they operate continuously without pause. Human beings also require recovery. Rest is not automatically laziness. Recovery is not weakness. Pausing is not failure. Even nature itself moves through cycles. Day becomes night. Activity becomes stillness. Seasons change from growth to rest and back again. Life naturally contains rhythms. Sometimes the most productive decision is stepping back briefly so that clarity can return. Imagine trying to sharpen a tool while using it continuously without stopping. Eventually, effectiveness decreases. Effort increases while results become weaker. People sometimes experience something similar. They continue pushing forward despite exhaustion, despite emotional strain, despite losing connection with purpose. Eventually, movement becomes difficult. Strength returns when restoration receives attention. This means caring for yourself matters. Physical health matters. Mental health matters. Emotional well-being matters. Relationships matter. Peace matters. Because achieving goals while losing yourself along the way creates a difficult victory. The journey matters as much as the destination. How you arrive matters. Who you become matters. And sometimes true success is not measured only by achievements collected over time. Sometimes true success is measured by the ability to build a life that feels meaningful while you are living it. A life where ambition and peace can exist together. A life where progress and gratitude can exist together. A life where growth continues without losing appreciation for the present moment. Because at the end of the journey, people rarely wish they had worried more. They rarely wish they had delayed every dream. They rarely wish they had spent less time with people they loved. Often they simply wish they had lived more fully, appreciated more deeply, and acted more courageously while they had the chance. And perhaps that understanding alone can begin changing the way a person chooses to live today. As the years move forward, people slowly begin understanding something that is difficult to recognize when they are younger. Life is not only shaped by the major events everyone notices. It is also shaped by quiet moments that often receive very little attention. A single conversation can change direction. A single book can introduce a new idea. A single decision can open a door. A single moment of courage can begin an entirely different future. Most people expect transformation to arrive with noise and dramatic announcements. They imagine giant breakthroughs, sudden opportunities, or extraordinary moments that completely change everything overnight. Sometimes that happens, but often transformation enters quietly. It arrives disguised as small choices. Imagine someone deciding to wake up 30 minutes earlier each morning. During the first day, almost nothing appears different. During the first week, the change still seems small. Even after a month, the difference may appear minor. But during those quiet mornings, the person reads, learns, thinks, plans, and grows. Months later, the accumulated effect becomes noticeable. Years later, the results may become extraordinary. The change did not arrive in one dramatic moment. The change arrived through repetition. Many people overlook the power of repeated actions because repeated actions often feel ordinary while they are happening. The problem with ordinary moments is that they rarely feel important. And because they rarely feel important, people sometimes treat them carelessly. But lives are often built inside ordinary moments. Think about trust. Trust rarely appears because of one action. Trust develops through repeated honesty. Think about friendship. Friendship often develops through repeated presence. Think about strength. Strength develops through repeated effort. Think about confidence. Confidence often develops through repeated experiences where people continue despite uncertainty. The same pattern appears again and again. Small things repeated consistently become large things eventually. There is another lesson hidden inside this idea. You do not always need to make enormous changes immediately. People sometimes become overwhelmed because they attempt to transform everything at once. They decide they will change every habit, solve every problem, learn every skill, and rebuild every area of life immediately. The intention is powerful, but the process often becomes exhausting. Imagine attempting to climb an entire mountain in a single leap. The effort would fail before the journey truly began. Mountains are climbed one step at a time. Books are written one page at a time. Skills are developed one practice session at a time. Lives are changed one decision at a time. This understanding removes unnecessary pressure. You do not need perfection today. You do not need every answer today. You do not need complete certainty today. You only need the willingness to continue moving. There will still be difficult days. There will still be moments where motivation disappears. There will still be times where fear returns and doubt begins speaking loudly. That is part of being human. People often believe successful individuals live without uncertainty, but uncertainty belongs to everyone. The difference is not that some people never experience doubt. The difference is that some people continue moving while doubt travels beside them. Imagine walking along a road while carrying a heavy bag. The weight may slow movement, but movement remains possible. Fear can travel beside you. Doubt can travel beside you. Uncertainty can travel beside you. They do not always need to disappear before progress begins. Sometimes progress happens while they are still present. And perhaps this creates an important realization. You do not need to become fearless before beginning. You do not need to become perfect before acting. You do not need to eliminate every weakness before moving toward a meaningful life. You simply need to continue choosing movement over permanent hesitation. Because every step forward, no matter how small it appears today, becomes part of a larger journey that is still unfolding. And often the future changes not because of one extraordinary action, but because someone quietly decided to keep going when stopping would have been easier. There is a moment that arrives in many people's lives when they begin realizing that waiting has quietly become a habit. They have been waiting for the perfect opportunity, the perfect circumstances, the perfect timing, or the perfect version of themselves. They tell themselves that once everything becomes clearer, then they will begin. They will start when they feel more confident. They will start when they have more money. They will start when they have more experience. They will start when fear finally disappears. At first, these thoughts sound reasonable because preparation matters. Learning matters. Planning matters. Growth matters. But there is a difference between preparation and endless postponement. Imagine someone standing beside the edge of a swimming pool waiting for the water to become completely comfortable before entering. They place one hand in the water and decide it feels too cold. They wait a little longer. Hours pass. The sun changes position. Still, they remain standing at the edge. Eventually, they realize something important. The waiting itself became the obstacle. Life sometimes works in a similar way. Many opportunities do not arrive after certainty appears. Certainty often begins developing after action appears. The first conversation may feel uncomfortable. The first presentation may feel uncomfortable. The first business attempt may feel uncomfortable. The first step into an unfamiliar experience may feel uncomfortable. Beginnings frequently feel awkward because beginnings introduce unfamiliar territory. But every person you admire was once unfamiliar with something they later mastered. Every skilled speaker was once nervous. Every experienced leader was once inexperienced. Every successful creator once faced empty pages. Every expert once struggled with basic steps. Growth naturally includes unfamiliarity. Yet people sometimes judge themselves harshly during the early stages of learning. They compare their beginning to someone else's middle or end. Imagine planting a seed and becoming frustrated because it does not immediately resemble a fully grown tree. The expectation itself would be unreasonable. Growth requires time. Growth requires repetition. Growth requires patience. Many people abandon progress because they expect immediate evidence that they are succeeding. But imagine visiting a construction site every hour while a building is being created. During short periods, little may appear different. Frustration might appear because visible changes seem small. Return months later and the difference becomes undeniable. Life often follows the same principle. Progress that appears invisible today may become obvious later. There is another important truth hidden inside patience. Patience does not mean passive waiting. Patience means continuing effort without demanding immediate rewards. It means trusting the process while participating in the process. A farmer plants seeds and waters them consistently. The farmer does not stand in the field demanding instant results. Instead, there is understanding. Effort happens today. Growth continues beneath the surface. Results arrive when conditions and time work together. Human development frequently follows similar patterns. Skills develop beneath the surface before becoming visible. Confidence develops beneath the surface before becoming natural. Wisdom develops beneath the surface before becoming obvious. Character develops beneath the surface before becoming recognized. Not everything valuable announces its arrival immediately. Sometimes important things grow quietly. Sometimes important things take longer than expected. And sometimes people discover that what felt like delay was actually preparation. Because life occasionally uses waiting periods to teach lessons that speed could never teach. Patience teaches trust. Difficulty teaches strength. Challenges teach resilience. Experience teaches wisdom. And wisdom often reveals something powerful. You do not need to rush your entire life. You only need to keep moving with intention, because a slow step forward still moves farther than standing still. And over time, those steps create paths, those paths create journeys, and those journeys create lives that once existed only as possibilities inside the imagination. As people continue their journey through life, they often discover that success itself is not always what they originally imagined. Early in life, many define success through visible things. Money, possessions, titles, recognition, achievements, or status become symbols people chase because they appear valuable. There is nothing wrong with achievement. There is nothing wrong with wanting growth, financial security, or meaningful accomplishments. Ambition can create progress and open opportunities. But over time, many people begin discovering that external achievements alone do not automatically create fulfillment. Imagine spending years climbing a mountain with complete determination. You sacrifice comfort, invest energy, overcome obstacles, and continue pushing upward. Finally, you reach the summit. You stand at the top expecting complete satisfaction. Yet a question appears quietly. Now what? For some people, this question feels surprising because they assumed the destination itself would permanently create happiness. But human beings naturally adapt. What once felt extraordinary gradually becomes familiar. What once seemed distant eventually becomes normal. This does not mean goals are meaningless. Goals remain important because they create direction and encourage growth. The lesson is simply this. If fulfillment depends entirely on reaching future destinations, peace may always remain one step away. Life becomes richer when appreciation travels alongside ambition. Imagine a musician who loves only applause but not music itself. Imagine a writer who loves only finished books but not writing. Imagine a traveler who cares only about arriving and never experiences the journey. Something important would be missing. Meaning often lives within the process itself. The process of learning, the process of building, the process of becoming, the process of contributing. Sometimes people become so focused on receiving that they forget another powerful source of fulfillment: giving. Human beings often experience a unique kind of happiness when helping others grow. Encouraging someone during difficult moments, sharing knowledge, creating value, or making life better for another person. Think about moments when someone helped you unexpectedly. Perhaps someone offered advice at the right time. Perhaps someone believed in you when you doubted yourself. Perhaps someone gave encouragement during a difficult season. Small acts sometimes create effects far larger than people realize. A few words can change direction. A little kindness can create hope. A small action can remain in someone's memory for years. Many people search for purpose while overlooking opportunities already surrounding them. Purpose does not always arrive through dramatic missions or enormous achievements. Sometimes purpose appears in ordinary moments. Listening when someone needs support. Creating something useful. Teaching what you have learned. helping another person move forward, making life slightly better for someone else. Small contributions matter because lives are interconnected in ways people rarely see completely. Imagine dropping a stone into still water. The stone enters the surface at one point, but circles begin expanding outward. Actions often create similar effects. Words create effects. Choices create effects. Kindness creates effects. Courage creates effects. People may never fully know how far those effects travel. There is another reality worth remembering. No one travels perfectly. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone experiences confusion. Everyone experiences moments of weakness. Everyone experiences days where motivation disappears. People sometimes imagine that growth means eventually becoming flawless. But perfection has never been the requirement. Progress matters more than perfection. Learning matters more than perfection. Continuation matters more than perfection. Imagine learning to paint while refusing to create imperfect paintings. Progress would stop immediately. Imagine learning a language while refusing to make mistakes. Growth would become impossible. Imperfection often becomes part of development itself. This understanding creates freedom. Freedom to learn. Freedom to experiment. Freedom to improve. Freedom to continue despite mistakes. Because a person who continues imperfectly often moves farther than a person waiting endlessly for perfection. And perhaps that understanding changes something important. Perhaps life was never asking for perfection. Perhaps life was only asking for participation, to show up, to learn, to grow, to try, to continue, and to become a little stronger, wiser, and kinder with each passing season. As the journey continues, there is another truth that reveals itself slowly. Many of the things people spend their lives chasing are external, but some of the most important experiences are internal. Peace is internal. Confidence is internal. Gratitude is internal. Purpose is internal. People often search outside themselves for feelings they believe circumstances will eventually provide. They believe confidence will appear after success arrives. They believe peace will appear after every problem disappears. They believe happiness will appear after reaching one final destination. Yet life has a way of continually presenting new challenges, new responsibilities, and new mountains to climb. Imagine someone saying, "I will rest when everything is finished." The problem is that, for most people, everything is never completely finished. One responsibility leads to another. One project creates the next. One goal gives birth to another goal. If peace depends entirely on reaching an ending, many people may spend years postponing it. This is why learning to create balance becomes important. Balance does not mean every area of life receives identical attention every day. Life naturally moves through seasons. Some seasons require greater focus on work. Others require healing. Others require learning, relationships, or rest. Balance simply means remembering that life is larger than one category. A person may become financially successful while neglecting health. A person may achieve recognition while losing meaningful relationships. A person may gain status while losing peace of mind. External victories sometimes hide internal struggles. This is why it becomes valuable to pause occasionally and ask honest questions. Am I becoming healthier? Am I becoming kinder? Am I becoming stronger emotionally? Am I building a life that feels meaningful? Am I living according to values that matter to me? Questions like these act like mirrors. Mirrors do not judge. They simply reflect. Sometimes people avoid reflection because reflection can reveal uncomfortable truths. It may reveal habits that need attention. It may reveal fears that have remained hidden. It may reveal areas where change has been delayed. But awareness creates possibility. Without awareness, people continue repeating patterns unconsciously. With awareness, people gain choice. Choice creates direction. Direction creates movement. Movement creates growth. There is another interesting lesson hidden inside growth itself. Growth often feels uncomfortable while it is happening. Imagine muscles becoming stronger through exercise. During the process, there may be strain, effort, and temporary discomfort. Growth stretches current limits. Mental and emotional growth often follow similar patterns. Learning new skills can feel frustrating. Facing fears can feel uncomfortable. Entering unfamiliar situations can create uncertainty. But discomfort does not always signal danger. Sometimes discomfort signals expansion. Sometimes discomfort signals learning. Sometimes discomfort signals that old limits are being challenged. The challenge is that many people immediately retreat whenever discomfort appears. They assume difficult feelings automatically mean something is wrong. Yet some of life's most meaningful experiences exist beyond familiar territory. Friendships begin through unfamiliar conversations. Opportunities appear through unfamiliar actions. Growth emerges through unfamiliar experiences. Courage often means walking forward before complete comfort arrives. Imagine standing beside a doorway leading toward a larger world. Remaining where you are may feel safe because it is familiar. The unknown beyond the doorway may feel uncertain. But staying permanently inside the same room eventually creates another feeling: restlessness, because deep within many people exists a desire to grow, explore, learn, and become more than they currently are. That desire quietly reminds people that potential still exists. Potential to learn more, potential to contribute more, potential to experience more, potential to become more. And perhaps one of the most beautiful realities of being human is that growth rarely ends. No matter where someone begins, another lesson can be learned. Another skill can be developed. Another dream can be pursued. Another chapter can be written. Because life continues offering invitations to begin again. And sometimes the most powerful words a person can say are very simple. I am still learning. I am still growing. I am still moving forward.